Sometime after came a day when Barenziah was shaken awake by her nurse, dressed hurriedly, and borne from the palace. All she could remember of that dreadful time was seeing a huge shadow, with burning eyes filling the sky. She was passed from hand to hand. Foreign soldiers appeared, disappeared, and sometimes reappeared. Her nurse vanished and was replaced by strangers, some more strange than others. There were days, or it may have been weeks, of travel. One morning she awoke to step out of the coach into a cold place with a large grey stone castle, amid empty, endless grey-green hills, covered patchily with grey-white snow. She clutched Wuffen to her breast in both hands and stood blinking and shivering in the grey dawn, feeling very small and very dark in all this endless space, this endless grey-white space. She and Hannah, a brown-skinned, black-haired maid who had been traveling with her for several days, went inside the keep. A large, grey-white woman with icy grey golden hair was standing by her, by a hearth, in one of the rooms. She stared at Barenziah with dreadful bright blue eyes. "She's very black, isn't she?" the woman remarked to Hannah. "I've never seen a dark elf before." "I don't know much about them myself, my lady," Hannah said, "but this one's got red hair and a temper to match. I can tell you that. Take care, she bites, and worse." "I'll soon train her out of that," the other woman sniffed. "And what's that filthy thing she's got?" "Oh." The woman snatched Wuffen away and threw him into the blazing hearth. Barenziah shrieked and would have flung herself after him, but was held back despite her attempts to bite and claw at her captors. Poor Wuffen was reduced to a tiny heap of charred ash. Barenziah grew like a weed transplanted to a SKYRIM garden, a ward of Count Sven and his wife, the Lady Igna. Outwardly, that is, she thrived, but always there was a cold and empty place within. "I've raised her as my own daughter," Lady Igna was wont to sigh as she sat gossiping when neighboring ladies came to visit. "But she's a dark elf, what can you expect?" Barenziah was not meant to overhear these words. At least she thought she was not. Her hearing was keener than that of her Nordic hosts. Other less desirable dark elven traits evidently included pilfering, lying, and a little misplaced magic. Just a small fire spell here and a little levitation spell there, and as she grew older, a keen interest in boys and men, who could provide very pleasant sensations, and to her astonishment, gifts as well. Igna disapproved of this last for reasons incomprehensible to Barenziah, so she was careful to keep it as secret as possible. "She's wonderful with the children," Igna added, referring to her 5 sons, all younger than Barenziah. "I don't think she'd ever let them come to harm. A tutor had been hired when Johnny was 6 and Barenziah 8, and they took their lessons together. She would have liked to train in arms as well, but the very idea scandalized Count Sven and Lady Igna. So Barenziah was given a small bow and allowed to play at target shooting with the boys. She watched them at arms practice when she could, sparred with them when no grown-up folks were about, and knew she was good as or better than they. "She's very proud, though, isn't she?" one of the ladies would whisper to Igna, and Barenziah, pretending not to hear, would nod silently in agreement. She could not help but feel superior to the Count and his lady. There was something about them that provoked contempt. Afterwards, she came to learn that Sven and Igna were distant cousins of Darkmoor Keep's last titled residents, and she finally understood they were impostors, not rulers at all. At least they were not raised to rule. This thought made her strangely furious at them, a good clean hatred quite detached from resentment. She came to see them as disgusting and repelled insects who could be despised but never feared. Once a month a courier came from the emperor, bringing a small bag of gold for Sven and Igna, and a large bag of dried mushrooms from Morrowind for Barenziah, her favorite treat. On these occasions she was always made to look presentable, or at least as presentable as a skinny dark elf could be made to look in Inga's eyes, before being summoned into the courier's presence for a brief interview. The same courier seldom came twice, but all of them looked her over in much the same way a farmer would look over a hog he is readying for market. In the spring of her 16th year, Barenziah thought the courier looked as if she were at last ready for market. Upon reflection, she decided she did not wish to be marketed. The stable boy Straw, a big, muscular blonde lad, clumsy, gentle, affectionate, and rather simple, had been urging her to run off for some weeks now. Barenziah stole a bag of gold the courier had left, took the mushrooms from the storeroom, disguised herself as a boy in one of Johnny's old tunics and a pair of his cast-off breeches, and on one fine spring night she and Straw took the two best horses from the stable and rode hard through the night toward Whiterun, the nearest city of any importance, and the place where Straw wanted to be. But Moorhold and Morrowind also lay eastward, as they drew Barenziah as a lodestone draws iron. In the morning they abandoned the horses at Barenziah's insistence. She knew they would be missed and tracked down, and she hoped to throw off any pursuers. They continued on foot until late afternoon, keeping two side roads, and slept for several hours in an abandoned hut. They went on at dusk and came to Whiterun city gates just before dawn. Barenziah had prepared a pass of sorts for Straw, a makeshift document stating an errand to a temple in the city for a local village lord. She herself glided over the wall with the help of a levitation spell. She had reasoned correctly, as it turned out that by now the gate guards would have been alerted to keep an eye out for a young dark elven girl and a Nordic boy traveling together. On the other hand, unaccompanied country yokels like Straw were a common enough sight. Alone and with papers, it was unlikely that he would draw attention. Her simple plan went smoothly. She met Straw at the temple, which was not far from the gate. She had been to Whiterun on a few previous occasions. Straw, however, had never been more than a few miles from Sven's estate, which was his birthplace. Together they made their way to a run-down inn in the poorer quarters of Whiterun. Glove-cloaked and hooded against the morning chill, Barenziah's dark skin and red eyes were not apparent, and no one paid any heed to them. They entered the inn separately. Straw paid the innkeeper for a single cubicle, an immense meal, and 2 jugs of ale. Barenziah sneaked in a few minutes later. They ate, drank together, gleefully rejoicing in their escape, and made love vigorously on the narrow cot. Afterward, they fell into an exhausted, dreamless sleep. They